Everybody back. Welcome back from our break. We're really excited about this next topic. This is our last topic area for the conference, and the area is access and public sector policy implications for Montessori research. And we're going to have two key leaders in this area to talk about this work. Our first speaker is Jamilah Jor'dan, and she is from she's at the Illinois Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. And her talk is called Public Sector Policy, the What in Montessori Pedagogy. Our next speaker is Mira Debs, who is from Yale University. And her talk is called Why Public Montessori Does Not Always Equal Equity and How Research Can Make a Difference. So we welcome these two speakers, and we will start with Jamilah.
Hi, good afternoon, Stephanie. Thank you very much for the introduction, and I want to thank you and Angela for the invitation to join you this afternoon. On behalf of the Illinois Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, I bring you greetings this afternoon. As I'm looking at my screen, I see some familiar faces here. At the risk of leaving anyone out, just a quick shout out. So I see you. Of course, Mira, I'm glad to share the panel for this afternoon. So it's good to see you. It's been a while, so just glad to see you. So I just wanted to, just start with, the recognition of, where we are. I actually just left a webinar with, providers as we are now moving into our next plan as far as, COVID and the pandemic and the impact that it's had on the workforce, as in many states moving towards our vaccine distribution and our next phase that includes our early childhood workforce. And so we've been really busy in the governor's office since the pandemic started. It's definitely devastated the child care community nationally, and certainly the support from states and the federal government has been instrumental in keeping many child care providers whole during this time. But we are invested in continuing the supports and reviewing policies that will strengthen our early childhood system. However, the pandemic has definitely presented and surfaced challenges resulting in increased requests for research from our elected officials, as well as advocates to inform policies. Specifically, just a few areas, there have been several, is related to racial equity and equitable access to resources, as well as the workforce. And of course, as you have been hearing and seeing in the media, the need to stabilize our early childhood system, among others. So I wanted to start, this afternoon to talk with you about what I see is the greatest challenge for the Montessori community and researchers, which I also view as an opportunity. Thus, why I included the what in the title as it relates to Montessori pedagogy. So there is an increased need for the Montessori community to increase their visibility, and as we're sort of entering this next phase, to take control of the narrative that Montessori education is only for affluent children and families, and how that equates to many external audiences that it translates as it's for white children. So in a larger context of, as we think about state early childhood systems and the public sector policy, as we address policy issues, there's a need to, of course, speak in a way that others can understand and present research that is accessible to the general public. Most individuals, they in fact don't. We certainly have made some progress, but we still have many individuals who don't understand Montessori education, and there's a need to, highlight research that addresses the positive developmental and educational outcomes for children who have access to Montessori education. This is especially needed for to really emphasize the need for and address the outcomes for children of color. There's a policy issue related to parent choice, and parent choice has definitely been at the forefront of our conversations. And again, this link to the what. And so it begs the question as far as what are our parents receiving when we talk about parent choice. Since the reference to, as we know, the reference to Montessori is not protected, and therefore anyone can use the name in their program name or title. When addressing Montessori and access to quality care, we cannot assure families there will not be a difference in the quality in the operations, or that the program administration and staff will adhere to the essential components of high fidelity Montessori education. During this time, we need increased access to quality education, especially for children of color. And however, this places parents in a position of buyer beware situation. And so this is an area of research that is needed about Montessori education that both supports and informs parent choice, as well as increases the awareness and acceptance among elected officials, as well as our advocates. I want to now just pivot to, the workforce, because again, that's really been at the forefront of the pandemic, not only, this emphasis on a high quality, diverse workforce that's receiving increased attention, both prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and I assure you that it will continue as we think about post pandemic, as we think about policy. So the inability to identify quality individuals could slow the growth and adversely impact the ability to offer Montessori education. So we need to think about what the implications there might be as far as increasing Montessori education and its dependence on a specially prepared, highly qualified workforce. The ability to attract, prepare, and retain a sufficient specially trained workforce, again, to meet the needs of existing Montessori programs. But as we think about staffing new programs is significant. A sufficient number of qualified individuals to fill positions may be in short supplies in some communities, especially within communities of color. And competition in these communities for qualified staff could, in fact, increase the difficulty of attracting and retaining qualified individuals that could result in having to pay higher wages and greater benefits. And so these are some of the policy issues that we struggle with. So I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you, given who's in the audience, some of the questions that are relevant to policy research that we need to really think about. We need to ask the question and think about, as part of research, how we can address certain questions that will improve the overall well-being of the workforce, the Montessori workforce, and the workforce at large. So, so some of the questions, examples are: what is the current baseline of data available on staff wages? What is the impact of the minimum wage laws on teachers? As you know, many states have passed and will pass minimum wage laws. Do increases in minimum wage impact recruitment? What gaps currently exist in the research related to compensation and benefits? And that includes health, pension for the workforce. Where are there gaps in specific policy priorities or interventions as it relates to compensation and benefits for the workforce? In what ways has the pandemic highlighted or exacerbated issues of financial equity within the workforce? And how do issues of racial equity affect policy? How do we support the early childhood system financially? What does the recovery of the labor market look like for the employment of the workforce? So that's just a sample of some of the questions that we're struggling with and needing to address from a public policy perspective. And it's not just unique to one sector, but certainly questions and research that the Montessori community needs to really get their arms around these issues. There's been a legislative push around data efforts. This year, we really had a huge push from our elected officials around data efforts and wanting to really understand, and have a better profile of the workforce. So, this was really unique for us, and we found ourselves in a position at times of not being able to answer their inquiries because we didn't have the data and research. So we can only address, so the Montessori community is one that values peace and social justice, equity and inclusion. The community has also acknowledged that there's more work that's needed to ensure that Montessori schools, as well as the teacher education and preparation programs, are equitable and diverse. But we certainly know that there's more work that needs to be done in this area to ensure that we're applying a racial equity and social justice framework to all stages of policy development. Um, our legislators, as we think about policies, they are very specific in their ask about wanting to have disaggregated data that will surface disparities in access and outcome, because sometimes there are unintended consequences that are not always apparent. We need to monitor our progress towards equity and support the inclusion of equity in research and analysis. There's a need to reframe how we use data and research that is strength-based and supports a racial equity and social justice approach. So in closing, as I stated earlier, there's been this legislative push for data within our state. And if you haven't already experienced it in your state, I'm sure you will at some time. Our legislators are asking for demographics, they're asking for program evaluations, they're asking for distinct counts to draw comparisons related to program as well as resource allocation. So when thinking about policies, our approach will be an early learning system that is racially equitable and is driven by data that ensures that every young child and family, regardless of race, ethnicity, and social circumstances, has everything that she, he, and they need to develop optimally. Resources, opportunities, rewards, and burdens are fairly distributed across groups and communities so that those with the greatest challenges are adequately supported and not further disadvantaged. And finally, systems and policies are designed, reframed, or eliminated to promote greater justice for children and families. Montessorians have been successful in amending childcare regulations, educating licensing specialists, as well as quality rating and improvement system raters about what to expect in Montessori classrooms. They have devised strategies that provide high fidelity programs as well as certain expectations. And they have also, in some states, have been able to get the Montessori teaching credential recognized. However, as we know, there's more work that needs to be done. So we need research, we need continued engagement of the Montessori community to strengthen and advance quality education through public policy. So I'll I'll stop there so that we can hear from Mira. So thank you.